Digital Currency Group raising $700 million in an investment round led by SoftBank with a $10 billion valuation. DCG, which is also the parent company of Grayscale and CoinDesk, has pledged to buy as much as $1 billion worth of shares from the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust, which has been trading at a discount since March. Joining us now to discuss is Dave LaValle, Grayscale's global head of ETFs. Welcome to the show, Dave. So Grayscale's Bitcoin Trust has $40 billion worth of Bitcoin in assets under management, 3% of all Bitcoin in circulation. It's been trading at a discount. Any idea if this new raise from DCG will go toward buying up shares of GBTC?
Look, the investment that was announced over the weekend, this morning, is something that's really exciting for us. And Grayscale is very happy to be a part of the Digital Currency Group parent company, as you well know. And no, there isn't any indication that is going to go towards any investment in further buying GBTC shares.
So Dave, the persistent discount in GBTC, isn't that the market just saying, hey, look, this is never going to be an ETF, or this most likely it's not going to be an ETF, at least anytime soon? What do you say to that?
No, I don't think the persistent discount is any indication that is speaking towards the timing of a potential GBTC conversion into an ETF. We've been very public about our conviction and our determination, and also our interest in converting GBTC into an ETF. But really, as we all know, that's subject to regulatory approval. And I think that the discount is something that offers an opportunity for investors who believe in the Bitcoin opportunity. There's a number of different ways to invest in Bitcoin. Have a lot of conviction about this conversion to an ETF. While we can't predict timing, we're very excited that the SEC is open to the opportunity to review our filing.
Why do you think that discount's still there? What's the driving factor for the discount?
Well, there's a number of different ways that investors can invest in Bitcoin, and obviously the structure of the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust doesn't allow for redemptions, and that's a result of the regulators disallowal of those redemptions, and until we're allowed for simultaneous creations and redemptions, which would be a result of our ETF approval, I think we're have the potential to continue to see a discount. Upon the regulatory approval for an ETF, I think we would see that discount collapse quite quickly, and it's something that we're very active engaging with our regulators about.
So one recent hot topic has been, several people, including here at CoinDesk, arguing that a Bitcoin futures ETF is actually not that good an investment compared to a Bitcoin spot ETF for various reasons like contango. And I'm just curious how you see that, because there's been a lot of commentary on that, just saying like, over time, you're going to actually lose money if you invest this way.
So, in instances when a commodity can be reliably stored, such as gold or silver, investors have overwhelmingly preferred a spot product versus a futures product. So when we take a look at GLD or IAU or SLV, these are all ETFs that physically hold the commodity. We believe that that's going to be the same for Bitcoin as well. There are inherently other complexities in a futures-based commodity product, and some of those complexities you outlined there. There's additional costs, a little bit more complex for the manager to have to roll the futures, and ultimately that can bleed away from the investor's return profile or the investor's ability to really track the underlying commodity that they're investing in. And so, we're excited about the approval of the Bitcoin future ETF. We think it's a great step in the right direction for the ETF industry, but we believe that the spot product will be a more effective representation of the underlying asset in the ETF wrapper.
So, Dave, we had the ETF futures launched. They were fairly successful, but would they take the steam out of a spot ETF should one be approved? I mean, have they taken all the money that you could possibly take in for an ETF?
No. I mean, look, the approval of BITO was and the ultimate listing, the first few days of trading was a very impressive asset gathering. Quickest ETF to over $1 billion in assets, a very impressive launch, and frankly, a great win for the overall ETF industry and markets in general, that the product has been trading smoothly and the liquidity has been strong and investors have been having a good experience buying and selling the product. But ultimately, after getting to that first billion, there really hasn't been a meaningful asset raise since. I think it's about 1.1 or 1.2 billion in assets right now. I think a spot Bitcoin approval and a spot Bitcoin launch would garner significant asset raise relative to that.
Wouldn't it be easier though to convert, let's say, an ETH fund into an ETF, spot ETF, than it would be a Bitcoin a Bitcoin into a big spot Bitcoin ETF? Do you think that maybe perhaps there might be some more leniency when it comes to that, and maybe that should be the direction you guys should go to?
It's incredibly difficult to predict what the SEC and regulatory agencies are going to react to, but I think showing this Bitcoin futures approval is a path towards more comfort with the underlying asset, Bitcoin. And look, our filing was deliberate in terms of the timing of us putting the filing in. The SEC now has the Bitcoin futures ETF off their plate. We have a very strong working relationship with the SEC. We've had very constructive dialogue over the past several years, and we're excited that they're going to review our filing for a spot Bitcoin ETF.
Right, Dave. So Grayscale is looking to convert its GBTC fund physical or into a ETF, a physical Bitcoin ETF. Now, SEC Chair Gary Gensler has signaled he's comfortable with the Bitcoin futures ETF, but has indicated he may need more authority from Congress to approve a physical Bitcoin ETF. Is that your understanding as well? And if so, how soon do you think the SEC might be ready to approve a physical ETF for Bitcoin?
Impossible to predict the timing of that. However, I think Chair Gensler and the staff have been very deliberate and very consistent in their messaging. And most of that messaging over the past 9 weeks or so has really been about the Bitcoin futures ETF and their comfort with a 40 Act wrapper for Bitcoin futures in an ETF structure. Now that that's off their plate, we're excited to put our filing in, have a strong engagement with the staff and with Chair Gensler as well, and figure out a path forward. A lot of his concerns and a lot of the staff's concerns that have been in disapproval filings and some of the other filings that have come in front of the SEC over the past several years seem to have been taken care of in this Bitcoin futures ETF being brought to market. And so we're really excited to be able to have the opportunity to now have our filing in front of the SEC and continue our constructive dialogue towards an approval.
So some analysts have suggested that there may be pressure on the SEC to approve your ETF because otherwise it would trap investors in this discounted fund. Is that would you say that's correct, or is that something you would agree with?
Look, I've been innovating in the ETF market for the past 20 or so years and brought a lot of innovative products to market. I've never seen the SEC be pressured into an approval, so I'm not sure I would use the word pressured. I think that the reality that we've had a very strong, very constructive working dialogue with the SEC, very strong partnerships with the NYSE in terms of our filings that the New York Stock Exchange has to be putting in to allow for listing and trading of the Bitcoin ETF will put us in a great position to have a very strong dialogue and our best chance for approval.
So Dave, a couple of questions before we wrap up. First of all, do you think how much of the questions about stablecoins are involved in Chairman Gensler's reluctance to approve a spot ETF? How much of that how much of that is just questions about what's going on in that realm affecting cryptocurrencies? And number two, obviously we saw ETH hit all-time highs a couple of days ago. What is your view on the outlook on that? Do you think it'll be in general an outperformer compared to Bitcoin?
So for your first question about stablecoins, our dialogue with the SEC in terms of our GBTC conversion into an ETF has not brought into conversation anything about stablecoins. Obviously, the SEC has a very long list of issues that they're working through within cryptocurrencies, and then also in traditional markets as well. So we hope to kind of just get in line and ensure that we're having an opportunity to kind of make our case for a GBTC conversion. And in terms of my outlook on ETH, I'm the ETF guy at Grayscale, so I'm not sure I'm going to be putting any price predictions on any of our assets that are in any of our trusts, but excited about the overall drive for diversification and overall interest in the market. I think what we saw with the
Do you think there are other commissioners at the SEC who might be a little more favorable toward the idea of a physical Bitcoin ETF, and that may be able to put pressure on, say, Chair Gensler to come around and approve such an ETF?
I don't think Chair Gensler is anybody who is going to get pressured into doing anything. I think we have very strong conversations with a number of different divisions within the SEC. It's trading and markets, it's corporate finance, it's DERA. And so we're having conversations with, in all avenues of the SEC, pushing towards this GBTC conversion.
Okay.